If you are not familiar with all the different types of mobile connections, well, you are in luck because that's what today's show is all about, starting right now.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Welcome back to Security Plus here at IT Pro TV. And if, well, you like standards, you are in luck today because we're going to go over a few of them because we need to understand the different types of connections that our mobile devices might be making so that we are aware where we may need to secure those up. Wes, you're going to help us run through those standards and connections so that we, again, are familiar with where those might be.
That's really what this is about. It's more about learning a little bit more of the vocab. And like Dan said, it's about specifications and standards. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in here because honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this episode is to get you familiar with some of the technologies, but I'm going to warn you ahead of time. It is about time to break out the flashcards. And so let's go ahead. Let's just dive right into the very first technology that when it comes to mobile communications, really one of the most popular ones is cellular. And I want to tell you a little bit about identifiers and how mobile devices are identified on a cellular network, specifically when it comes to two different components. The first one, if you haven't heard of it, that's the IMEI, and that acronym I'm going to probably mess up a couple of times. But this is essentially a worldwide hardware identifier, right? If you're familiar with IP addresses, if you're familiar with more so like MAC addresses inside of computers, and that's how we identify the hardware on a network. Well, that's essentially what this is on a cellular network. It identifies worldwide a unique hardware identifier, and it's used inside of the GSM and UTMS networks, just global systems for mobile communications, and the Universal Mobile Telecommunications Service. And it does have a potential for spoofing. This is one of the ways they can see that, let's say, for instance, maybe I left my phone in a restaurant and somebody steals it, right? I call my carrier and I say, hey, somebody sold my phone. Well, they'll put this on a blacklist. They'll put that number on a blacklist, and they won't allow people to, it'll let all cellular carriers know, hey, your phone's been stolen. But you do have to be careful because it does have the potential for spoofing. Remember, masquerading as a device, an unauthorized device that's masquerading as it's legit.
So if I have a picture of my IMEI on like Instagram, I should probably pull that down.
You should probably pull that off. Yeah, that'll probably cause you some problems.
Finish talking to these good folks. I'm just going to be perusing the internet.
We'll give it the blur effect in production. Thank goodness our directors can do that. That's right. So how do we identify the users themselves? Well, the users that's where the International Mobile Subscriber Identity comes in, and that is the IMSI, if you will. It's a worldwide unique subscriber identifier, and it is also used in the GSM and UTMS networks, and it is stored inside of a SIM. So if you've ever had a SIM, that information is going to be stored in there. And remember, there are ways that they can potentially spoof that information. So we just want to make you aware of what these are. Now, inside of our show notes, and you'll have access to all the slides. I've got a little bit more information if you want to go a little bit farther about that. But again, I just want you to know more of a high-level overview of some of these technologies so you'll know more about them should they present themselves on the exam.
All right, well, let's keep this ball rolling because we got a lot to get through. Wi-Fi, right? We got to have it. It's something we need to be, well, I want it, that's for sure. I hate being tethered down. I want to be able to use that Wi-Fi, but there are a lot of standards when it comes to Wi-Fi.
There are, and you know, it's interesting because in the last few years, what they've done is the Wi-Fi Alliance has kind of renamed what these standards are. Now, you've probably heard us talk about the 802.11 standards. Well, the Wi-Fi Alliance has kind of changed the way they market them. And I want to talk about really quickly just the first three that have been around all the way since 1999. And these are some of the specifications. You'll see 802.11a, 802.11b, and G here. And you'll notice that they're also called Wi-Fi 1, 2, and 3. Interestingly enough, you might think I have those out of order, but I do not because 802.11b was actually they were made at the same time, but B actually came out to market first, caused some kind of confusion.
I was going to say, that's not confusing at all.
It's not confusing. See, a lot of people say, well, I know that A comes before B.
If you did B first, like in your order, then A, didn't you have bag and you got a nice mnemonic?
Absolutely, that's
and
great.
It's 1, 2, 3.
Well, you know, and then the one that's not quite legacy yet in the 802.11 standard is N. And you can see some of the specifications. It operates in the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz spectrum and the speeds behind it. It's interesting because I used to remember these for my exam. Bag is exactly how I do it, but this is called bagging. All right.
Bilbo Baggins.
That's right. You just put the N on the end there too. So you can see that that's called Wi-Fi 4. There's also AC as well as AX. So just have a passing familiarity with these standards in case they should ask you on the exam. Like I said, this is about flashcards here, but we want to give you the information that you need just in case they put you in a scenario where you have to implement some kind of wireless standard implementation.
Sorry, Wes. I'm over here cracking myself up thinking Bagnac Axax. That's probably not going to work too well as a mnemonic, but sure is funny to say out loud. Let's keep moving on. Let's talk about near field communications, NFC.
Yeah.
Neat technology, but got to learn about it, right?
It is, and it's really, really prevalent in most of your mobile devices. And NFC, that's near field communication. And there are some things I want you to know about near field communication as well. It's a very short range communication. We're talking 10 centimeters, right around 4 inches. I think it's like 3.93 inches. But anyways, don't worry about that. Just very, very near field or very, very near close due to endpoints have to be in order to make the communication. You can see the base frequency that it operates in, and it allows a very, very simple setup for things like file and data transfer. So have, again, a familiarity when it comes to the NFC technology and just, kind of understand how it plays out when it comes to mobile communications and connections.
Yeah, here's a blast from the past. Let's start talking about infrared. Now, this is not something I'm seeing too much anymore, but it could be lurking around maybe in a legacy devices and things of that nature. So it could be good to know on how to secure that.
Absolutely. So it's another one that's when it comes to infrared is a very short range communication. It's a very sensitive communication too.
That is
we're talking, that's right. Everybody likes cats. So I said, how can I put the most disturbing cat up there that you'll ever see? All right. So it's 1 meter, around 3.28 feet, if you will. And like I said, it's a sensitive line of sight communication. So sensitive that, even smoke, if you will, in between the transceiver and the receiver could cause, a communication problem. It's overseen by the IRDA, that's the Infrared Data Association, and it operates at various speeds. One of the most common one that we had was 16 megabits. So again, when it comes to your exam, be aware of some of these specifications, if you will, or attributes of infrared communication. And like I said, time to break out the flashcards.
That's right. Now, don't forget, any kind of wireless communication just wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about Bluetooth. We love Bluetooth. We use it all the time. But there are some different types of attacks that go along with Bluetooth. So we've got to be aware of Bluetooth, how it works, and some of those specifications as well.
Sure. So Bluetooth is another one of those very easy to set up data transfer solutions, if you will, and it works with things like fixed and mobile devices too. And keep in mind that it goes through a discovery and pairing process. You put your device in discovery mode and it basically says, hey, I'm out here, do devices want to connect? And then when you go to enter that process, that's the pairing process. Sometimes you'll see little pins that have to be identified and they say, hey, do you recognize this pin? If you do, go ahead and make the connection. If for some reason you don't recognize that, then shut Bluetooth down. I know Dan's a proponent of reducing that attack surface, and if you're not using it, disable it because people can use it to attack. It operates in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. Some of the things that I want you to be aware of are some of the various Bluetooth standards. Again, have a passing familiarity. Legacy, you don't really have to worry about too much because we're going way back, 732 kilobytes, bits, if you will, per second. Then you have some of the later standards. That EDR is enhanced data rate, and you can see where the speeds are there. And then finally, there's 3.0, and that's high speed. And that's 24 megabit transfer speeds. But then they have some of the later ones, if you will, and the later ones really come down to, they say Bluetooth low energy. And Bluetooth was a very power-hungry technology when it first came out. And one of the things that they've done in the later generations of Bluetooth, if you will, is to reduce the energy requirement. So that's what the BLE is. It's just Bluetooth low energy based Bluetooth standard.
Now, we've been talking a lot about different wireless technologies that are built in and around your mobile devices, and that makes sense, right? Because it's a mobile device. It doesn't make sense to have it plugged into something physically. It reduces the idea of its mobility. That doesn't mean there aren't physical plugs on mobile devices. Quite the contrary. Usually we do see some form of USB connectivity as well. Correct, Wes?
That's right, Dan. There are some things that we need to know when it comes to USB. USB is a point-to-point communication standard, and it's basically used for data transfer. One of the things I want you to keep in mind is that you can literally you could have this kind of like a hub and spoke network. Up to about 126 devices can be connected to just a single port. Now, there are a series of standards, and I just want you to be, again, a passing familiarity. Some of the older standards that we have, 1.1 and 2.0, you can see the transfer speeds. Now, we have the 3.0 and various just revisions of that standard as well, and you can see the speeds here too. And then we have USB 4 too as well. So again, just have a passing familiarity, if I could say that, with some of the standards when it comes to USB. So if they set you up with any kind of situation or scenario, you will be aware of it.
That's right. And don't forget, as Wes said, this is a data transfer thing that we use with USB. So when you start plugging things into it, like, I don't know, you're at an airport, you think, hey, there's a safe thing to plug into. Might not be as safe as you could think and could be some sort of hacking device. So always be paranoid with what you plug into your system and know what it is before you plug it in. Let's move on to another piece of interesting technology that tends to lurk inside of our mobile devices is global positioning, right? Those ideas that, where am I? How do I get there? Where are you? That would be great because I forgot where my phone is and now I need to find it. These are things that help us out, but they could be used to learn information, security leaking, info out on that. Tell us a little more about GPS.
You mean the thing that tells you you're on the right road when you're like, there is no road, I'm in a forest.
Yeah.
That's right.
No,
So
turn left.
that's right. So global positioning system, another one of those mobile communication standards just to be aware of. And I just want to talk briefly about some of the components. There are three major components. You have what's known as the space segment. And the space segment is 24 satellites, basically triangulated around the entire world. Now, I say 24, there are actually 3 of them that are 24 of them operational, if you will, and then 3 of them on standby. There's also a control segment, and the control segment essentially is what is the worldwide monitoring system and the control stations, as well as the user segment. The user segment essentially is the GPS receiver, which is technical jargon for this episode for your mobile device. And then there are various global navigation satellite systems, and we've put a few up here. GPS is just the one we have here in the States. You can see Russia has theirs, the EU has Galileo, and then in China as well. So again, just kind of making you aware of some of the various standards when it comes to the global positioning system, and it is a form of a mobile device communication or connection.
Yeah, now one of the cooler functionalities in your mobile devices could be the use of RFID, which has its own set of security wonders that you could play around with. But the idea that you do have RFID in your mobile device, you can find some interesting ways in which to use this.
Definitely. RFIDs, if you've ever seen RFID tags, well, if you haven't, let's talk about it. Essentially used in electromagnetic fields that help us to identify and track tags. Tags can be associated with assets, and I do want you to know that the tags that you attach to objects come in 2 different forms. Those types are passive tags, which are powered by the RFID reader, and there's also active tags, which are battery powered. So again, have a familiarity when it comes to radio frequency identifiers and some of the components surrounding them.
All right, so now that we've gone through a bunch of different types of mobile connections and connection capabilities, let's talk about just some generalized security concerns that we might have toward these and what can we do about them.
Sure. When it comes down to it, some of those concerns that we have to worry about are things like eavesdropping. Remember, eavesdropping, because you have a wireless communication, somebody can get in the middle of that. You have to worry about, like with Bluetooth, if you will, things like data leaks. If that data sensitive information gets in the wrong hands, it could cause problems in the association or the risks that are associated with that. Also, things like replay attacks, being able to capture information, store it, and then use it at a later time, as well as things like spoofing attacks. Remember, spoofing attacks are just basically masquerading as a legitimate or authorized endpoint when it really is nothing more than the hacker. And then last but not least is going to be things like unauthorized use. When we talk about things like, for instance, bluejacking, right? Hijacking somebody's Bluetooth communication, right? Unauthorized use of the devices. And that's why if you're not using some of these various wireless communications, go with Dan's, how would I say that? Your philosophy, your mantra is if you're not using it, disable it, because then it reduces your attack surface and you don't even have to worry about some of the security concerns.
That's right. I practice what I preach too. If you look at my phone right now, location's off, Bluetooth's off, wireless is off. I'm starting to think about turning off mobile data when I'm not using it, just because why not? It's just a button away. It's that easy, and you've added to your security. So great stuff today. You've learned about all the different connection types that might be a security concern for your mobile devices. And if you're not aware of them, you're not going to be able to secure them properly. So now hopefully we've helped you out with that. That said, we're out of time for this episode, but guess what? That's right. There's more to come in our Security Plus series. So until then, good folks, have a great day.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.